Welcome back to the Get Louder podcast. We got a very special guest in the house, don't we?
We do.
Yes, we do. His name is Kris Mukherji.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Yeah, man. So we were chatting before. You were telling us about kind of where you're from, where you were originally born, and then how you came to San Diego. Give us that quick background really quick.
Yeah, sure. I was born in India.
Nice.
I moved out to the U.S. in the middle of 8th grade back like in 1993, 94. Went to junior high here for like half a semester, started high school here. That was in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Graduated high school and then moved out to San Diego in 2000 to attend UCSD. Have been here since.
Do you remember Italy? I mean, I'm sorry, India?
I do. I have fond memories of it. I haven't been back. My dad travels back and forth often, and my hopes are to go back and maybe take my son there one day as well.
That would be
and
awesome.
my daughter as well. Yeah.
I've been wanting to go for a long time.
I haven't.
Where Mumbai?
Yeah, I mean, wherever, but yeah. I'll probably start there.
It's changed a lot. I'll tell you, it's changed a lot
Yeah.
from when I was there. It's definitely a growing country, and
Yeah.
it's becoming a tech capital to
Yeah.
a certain extent. So we'll see. Yeah.
That's awesome. One minor thing that I left out in the intro was that you are a super lawyer, and you have been a super lawyer since 2018 to 2022. Man, congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So is this just like every year they just keep sending you the award, or what's that process like?
I think super lawyer is done by your colleagues
Right.
nominating you for it, right? So it's a big honor, right? So if you're doing what you're supposed to do, and if you are living to a certain code, and you're developing your business and being authentic and honorable, your colleagues appreciate you, and I think that's a way of them to say, hey, look, this is a person in that industry that we look up to and we respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So your areas of focus, I notice on your content, you've been posting a lot about personal injury,
Right.
but you have other areas of focus as well. Did you start out with personal injury, or did you start in like estate business?
I did not. So I
Yeah.
started off, actually, when I graduated law school, I started off in estate planning and business.
Okay.
They go hand in hand pretty well. Did that, but I always, was very good at generating business, and I always was generating a lot of personal injury business that I was referring out. And a good friend of mine, a colleague, Pratik Shah, I'll say his name, kept telling me, he's like, Kris, you got to try personal injury. You're good at it. Do it. So I incorporated in my practice around 2019 is when I started, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Really enjoy the type of cases they are. Anytime you're working with people that are injured, hurt, and you're going up against an insurance company, it's always a fun case for me, right? You're looking out for victims in that manner. So I really enjoy those cases, and it's been a growing part of my practice, and it's continued to grow, and I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. What percentage of cases does that account for now?
I would say by the end of this year, it'll probably be 60% in the estate planning business world and 40% in personal injury.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So 60-40.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us what estate planning is?
Absolutely. So estate planning encompasses, everybody's heard the term revocable trust or a living will or a will. So estate planning encompasses all of that, right?
Got it, right.
In California, if you have an estate that's valued more than $184,500, so if you think about it,
Specifically.
that's a very specific number, but in California, if you own a condo, it's worth more than that, right?
Right.
So if your estate's worth more than $184,500, in order for your family to avoid the probate process, right, which is an expensive process, time-consuming process, you could do that by creating a living trust. So when we talk about estate planning, it encompasses documents such as a living trust, wills, healthcare directives, durable financial power attorney documents, HIPAA authorization, to make sure that the family's assets are protected, make sure their children are well taken care of in case something ever happens to them. So it's a very comprehensive process to ensure their assets can go on to their children without having to go through this very expensive and time-consuming probate process.
So explain to me real quick. So like, let's say, so before there's like a will, right? That's what I've always heard, a will.
Right.
I just started, I always kind of heard a trust, but that was always something I always thought really wealthy people like the DuPonts or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have and I don't really, and maybe you can explain what a living trust is.
Sure.
What that means. But so I've always heard of things like a will, right? You have a will, if you pass away, things get distributed, right? So what's the difference between having a will and having a living trust? And can you explain what the living and living trust means?
Absolutely. Well, let's break it down this way. So everybody's heard of a will, right? The purpose of a will is if you have a will, you get to outline in the will who you want your assets to go to. So in my will, if I pass away, I can say, hey, look, I want my assets to go to Jack, Jim, and John, right? If you don't have a will, right, you go through the probate process. What people don't know is even if you have a will, you still go through the probate process.
And tell us what probate is exactly.
Absolutely. So the probate process is the process where in California we have, in other states, they have what's called the probate courts, right? It's a court supervised process where the court supervises the administration of your estate, right? You have the will, you submit it to the court, you file the necessary documents, and the process could take 1.5 years, 2 years to finish, depending on the size of your estate, the amount of creditors you have, and the cost of probate is based on a statutory fee schedule. So if you wanted to look it up, you can go online and type in probate fee calculator, put in the value of your estate, and it'll tell you exactly how much your probate might cost. Court costs, attorney fees, executor fees.
What might it cost?
Well, $184,000. If you have an estate that's, let's say, $150,000, you're looking at probate costs close to $14,000, $15,000 in executor fees, attorney fees, court fees. That's an expensive probate for a $150,000 estate,
Absolutely.
right? So the way you can avoid that is by creating let me take a step back. If your estate's only worth $150,000, that's below the probate limit, so there won't be a probate. But if you have a $200,000 estate, for example, you don't have a living trust, then that estate can go through probate and it can get expensive. If you have $1 million estate that you don't create a living trust, it's even more expensive. So that's why if you have an estate worth more than $184,500, you want to create a living trust.
Yeah.
Now to answer your earlier question, what's the living in a living trust? Well, that just means the living document, meaning you have the power to change it, amend it, update it, modify it through the course of your life, right? And the way the living trust takes into place, for example, is let's say if Brandon creates a living trust. You're married.
Engaged.
Engaged. You have children?
Yes.
Okay. So because he's engaged, he's not married yet. If Brandon were to pass away tomorrow, God forbid, doesn't happen, and let's say Brandon doesn't have a will, then in order for Brandon's assets, his estate, to go to his children, it has to go through the probate process,
Right.
provided it's above the $184,500 limit. It's going to go through this process, and when it comes out of the process, right, it's going to be reduced by the amount of attorney fees and executor fees and court fees, etc. But because his children are minors, in order for it to go to his children, somebody has to apply to be the guardian of the estate of his estate before it can go to the children. And then that person has to hold on to those assets till his children are 18 years of age, right? Even if he had a will and he named his children as the beneficiaries, it would still have to go through the probate process. But what Brandon could do is he could create a living trust, let's say called the Brandon Family Living Trust. And in that living trust, he can say, I want my assets to go to my children, but I want it preserved in trust till they turn a certain age, 28, 32, whatever it might be. Because obviously, you don't want an 18-year-old getting
Right.
$500,000.
Right.
Now, what happens when Brandon passes away, because those assets did not belong to Brandon, it belonged to the Brandon Trust, it was a separate entity, there's no probate process. And his
So
assets...
someone still owns it technically.
Absolutely. It's owned by this living trust, right? And it gets distributed based on the language of this living trust, thereby avoiding the probate process, right?
Maybe that's why they call it living also, because it's a person.
Look, it's a living document.
Yeah.
You get to truly modify it, amend it, update it the course of your life.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a great document to have. And I think everybody in California, I mean, if your assets are below $184,500, above that, you should definitely consider it. If you have children, if you're married, definitely consider that.
So I guess my question would be, why would somebody ever choose a will over, like, if they had the choice? Is it because it's way more expensive to have a trust created, or people just don't know? It's just a knowledge thing?
All of that. You're right. Because most people have heard of a will, right? And most people, understand, hey, I got to create a will to make sure things are taken care of. And you're right. If you create a will, it's going to allocate what's going to happen, who's going to get what. But a lot of people don't understand that even if you have a will, and if your assets are above $184,500, it's going to go through the probate process.
Right.
And they don't know that, right? But if you sit down with them and you show them the numbers saying, hey, look, this is how much a living trust might cost you. But if that same estate goes through probate, it's going to cost your children thousands and thousands of dollars. It's going to make sense for them and say, okay, I get why I need to create a living trust.
Yeah.
Now is the trust, because you hear about like these tax incentives of doing a trust, and also does the trust become, is that considered like a corporation or a company, or is it protected? Like if you put all your assets in a trust, and let's say you get sued and completely like, wiped out, they can't touch the trust. Like, what other benefits are there to having a trust besides it being like a
will?
A will.
Good question. So the type of trust that you're talking about, as far as if you get sued and protection, you're looking at asset protection trusts and irrevocable trust. We're not talking about that.
Okay.
We're talking about a family revocable trust. A family revocable trust is an extension of you, right? So if Brandon got sued, it's an extension of him. So those assets would be accessible in a lawsuit, right? So I don't want anybody to ever think that a revocable family trust is an asset protection tool. I get called for that all the time. I get asked about that all the time. And that is not the right asset protection tool. If you are looking for asset protection, if you own rental properties, and if you want to and you own them maybe free and clear, and you want to put them in LLCs, creation of entity structures such as LLCs or even irrevocable trust structures or other avenues can be utilized for asset protection purposes, and we do that. But a revocable family trust is not an asset protection tool. And and if you're looking at it from a tax benefit as well too, when you have assets in a revocable trust, you're protecting your family from multiple ways. You're protecting them from potential creditors, and let me explain what I mean by that. If you have an 18-year-old, let's say you have a 10-year-old child, right, and you put money into the trust, and you say, hey, if I pass away, I want that money to go to them. If you have a will that goes to probate, when that child turns 18, that money goes to them at that point. If at 19 that child drives to Vegas and loses all that money, it's done. If at 19 that child gets a credit card and racks up credit card bills, that money is accessible by the creditors. However, if you have a revocable trust structure that you created, once you die, that trust that you created, which was at one point revocable, now becomes irrevocable. And if you have money in the trust for your son or your daughter, and it says, hey, look, they don't get to access this money till they're 30 years of age, right? Creditors can't come after that money in that trust because it's preserved in trust till they're 30 years of age, right? So if that child ends up, being 22, 23 years old and messing up, they're protected. There are spendthrift provisions in that trust that they'll prevent the creditors from accessing that money because it's not in the child's name at that point.
Right.
And I don't know about you guys, but if somebody gave me $500,000 at 21 or 22, we're 4 hours from Vegas. Right? So
Something getting spent.
somebody's gonna spend. Yeah. So I don't, a lot of times with the parents we deal with, I tell them, I said, look, you may love your child and you may like, oh, I got to give my child all this stuff. That's great. But you don't necessarily have to give it to them at 21, 22, or even 25 sometimes.
Right.
Are there other ways where the asset protection trust and the family trust like work together, or have you seen what is like the most intricate, like super dope setup that someone's ever done to like have just the ultimate situation for their business,
ultimate
and their
protection.
family, the ultimate protection,
Look, there's so many different structures you can create right there, right? I mean, we could sit here and talk about this all day long.
How can I be untouchable?
right? That's all we're trying to figure out.
I want to be untouchable.
Call me. We'll talk about it offline, right? We can talk about this all day long. But you're right. There's, the family. Like I said, the family trust structure. The purpose of that is inheritance, right? It's passing on assets to your children.
Right.
But in addition to that, there are other structures you can create to, hopefully help families avoid estate taxes that might show up if they have a highly taxable estate, to help them, do some sort of asset protection. If they have investment properties, to put them in different LLC structures. There's ways to do different things for different people. And each client is very unique in that scenario. You have to sit down and assess with the client what their needs are, what keeps them up at night. And my goal is to help them kind of alleviate a lot of those concerns and put structures in place that's going to help them sleep better at night.
So a big thing we hear about is generational wealth, right? And using these trusts as strategies to not pay taxes, to protect themselves and all that good stuff, right? At what level, so let's say there's probably like a trust for like if you have a $500,000 house and you just want to, avoid probate, boom, then this trust will be for you. Let's say maybe you're a low 7-figure wealth, this trust might be for you. Let's say you're an 8+ figure wealth, then you're gonna want to protect yourself with this trust. How would you strategize with these 3 different families?
Totally. First of all, pay your taxes. The IRS is very good. Don't come after me.
We love you.
We love you.
This is not law advice, by the way, guys.
This is not legal advice.
We just
Don't
chatting.
hide from the IRS. That being said, there are obviously different structures, right? And on the simplest scale, we've all heard of something called a 1031 exchange, and what's called a step up in basis, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say your parents bought a house in 1980, and that house they bought it for $100,000. That house today is worth, let's say, $1.5 million in San Diego. Very plausible.
Right.
Okay. If they bought the house in 1980 for $100,000, and if your dad at some point or your mom at some point made the mistake of deeding that property to you, don't ever do that. Here's why. If they deed the property to you, then it's assumed that you acquired that property at that $100,000 value. Which means that when you go to sell that property, and you sell that property for $1.5 million, now it's assumed that you acquired it at $100,000 value, which means that you have to pay capital gains on that $1.4 million gain.
A lot of gains.
So I get parents calling me all the time, hey, I want to deed the property to my child. I was like, absolutely not. You don't want to do that, right? And usually they'll call for multiple reasons, and if somebody's very insistent, I have to deed the property. At that point, I ask them the question, okay, tell me the truth. What's going on? And they'll say, we might file for bankruptcy next year or something along those lines. And I tell them, I said, look, even if you deed the property to your child this year, California has what's called a 5-year look back. So when you file for bankruptcy, that bankruptcy trustee can go back and look at what was in your estate within the last 5 years. And if they see something that was fraudulently transferred out, they can bring it back into that bankruptcy estate. So going back to the example of why not to deed the property, if your parents acquired that property $100,000, and they put that property in a family trust, and you inherit that property, when you inherit that property, you now get what's called a step up in basis for capital gains purposes, which means that you did not acquire that property at $100,000 value, you acquired it at $1.5 million value, which means if you go to sell that property, you pay zero capital gains on it because you got to step up in basis for capital gains purposes. And you could do that generationally, right? That's what the wealthy families utilize. They utilize the 1031 exchange, which is obviously an IRS tax code, step up in basis to pass on assets, through generations without having to worry about that part of it. That's one of the most common utilized aspects. Now, if we're talking about advanced estate planning for families that have what we call an estate taxable estate, there's other avenues, there's other methods to utilize for that, right? There's things such as an irrevocable life insurance trust or an intentionally defective grantor trust and other aspects out there as well. But that's a conversation for a different day.
There's so many. I mean, the level of intricacies and complexities in this whole world blows my mind. It's like, what's your opinion about that? They just sat down one day and they're just like, we're gonna make this so like no one has any idea what's going on, and we're just gonna protect ourselves, and here's how we're gonna write. It's just like,
the tax code is interesting, right? That if you learn to understand the tax code, and obviously, a lay person is not going to understand that, which is why having the right advisors in position to do that, a good tax advisor, good enrolled agent, a good CPA who can understand how to utilize the tax code to benefit you. That's the best course of action, right? That's what the wealthy do, right? The wealthy people, you have advisors in position. They have the best CPAs, the best financial planners, the best attorneys working to figure out how do we create this generational wealth for our families.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong in that. The tax code is designed to do that.
Right,
right?
exactly.
So you're not cheating anything out of it. You're simply utilizing the code to your benefit.
right.
Yeah. You're playing the game as the rules are written.
Right, exactly.
And when you hire these professionals, they just know
The rules,
The rules.
exactly.
I don't know if you guys watch football, but I'm a huge Niner fan. But at the end of the day, Bill Belichick knows the rules better than anybody, and he uses the rules to his benefit, right? And that's just what it is.
Referencing something specific.
Possibly.
That's funny. They're struggling right now, but
There you go.
So with somebody who has this knowledge, and you have your law firm and you do estate planning, have you implemented a lot of these things for yourself and your family?
Yeah, keep in mind, man. I'll tell this to people all the time. When I started my practice, my wife and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And my desk was my dining table, and I would put my suit on and I would sit at my desk, right?
Nice.
And as knock on wood, as my practice has grown and business has grown, and I'm blessed to be where I am at right now, right? You start to think about it from that perspective. You start to think about it. Okay, what do I have to do to ensure that my family's taken care of? God forbid something ever happens to me tomorrow. From all aspects, right? So yes, I have financial advisors that I work with for myself, right? I have professional tax advisors that I work with for myself. I have professional insurance agents that I work with for myself. So I don't just I practice what I preach, right? There's things that I know, things that I know I don't know, right? And things that I don't know. So if I'm working with experts in those areas, I'm covering my blind spots, and that's what I want to do.
That's amazing. So take us back a little bit to kind of, you graduated law school, and what was the next step? How did you go from graduating law school to having your own firm? You talked about just a second ago, your office was your desk, you had your suit on. What about a little bit before that?
Yeah, whenever I talk about that, I always get a little choked up because I remember those days.
Yeah.
I got into law school, like I said, in 2008, and I went into law school, and my personal statement was about, I want to start my own practice. That was my personal statement. I always worked for myself, pretty much. Even when I was a trainer or a manager at 24 Hour Fitness, I always felt like it was my own job. Whatever I did, I got back from that, right? If you did not put in the effort, didn't put in work in, you didn't get paid well, right? So I always knew that, I understood that. So when I applied to law school, it was always about having my own firm. When I graduated law school, I graduated in May 2012, took the bar in July, got the results November 16th. My wedding date was November 17th.
Wow.
So I literally got my bar results at wedding rehearsal dinner. No joke. Yeah. My wedding rehearsal was at UTC. I remember my wife and I and my best friend snuck out. We went down to a local coffee shop where I used to study at, opened my laptop up while everybody's at wedding rehearsal dinner. Yeah. And I opened my laptop and it said the name above appears in the pass list. And I remember just breaking down crying.
Yes.
Needless to say, the next day was my wedding, and it was a rager, right? Yeah. It was a rager. So we had a great time, and then in December, I got sworn in to the California bar in a private ceremony. And I remember talking to my wife, and I said, I have options. I can go and, work for a firm. I can do this, I can do that, a couple of options here. Or I can start my own practice, and I will, we will likely struggle, right? But in a couple of years, we'll never look back. And she's like, let's just do that, right? Yeah. We'll do that. And I remember that's what we did. I used to wake up. My first year as a lawyer, I was still working as a strength and conditioning coach and a trainer. And I would wake up at 5 a.m. I'd go do that. Yeah. I'd come back. I would put my suit on. I'd go sit at my dining table. I'd open the phone book and I would look at a CPA, financial planner, and a realtor, and I would cold call them. I'd be like, hey, let me take you out a happy hour, coffee, lunch, dinner, whatever. Yeah. And they were like, you're a lawyer cold calling us? I was like, yeah. I was like, let me take you out a happy hour, coffee, lunch, dinner, whatever. I just want to get in front of your face. Yeah. And 2013, I think I made like $26,000 that year, but I probably spent like $27,000 on happy hours, coffees, and lunches and dinners. Right?
You built that network and those relationships.
And I still do that till today. And I tell young lawyers and young students that that's what you still have to do if that's what you want. But it's not for everybody. And I did that, and I still do that, and I enjoy that part of it, right? Because I built it up from the ground up, and relying on people. I remember there were attorneys that I relied on that till today are a huge asset for me, right? As an attorney, her name is Danielle Barger. She was a professor at my law school. She has a fantastic estate planning practice. She took me in her office. She let me have free space in her office, and she coached me, mentored me, and she still does till today. Yeah. Pablo Palomino, another fantastic estate planning attorney. Till today is a great resource for me. From the business law perspective, a gentleman named Walt Pennington, fantastic business law attorney. Till today, great resource for me. From a personal injury perspective, Pratik Shah, Jillian Hayes, Arthur DeGidio, Irving Pedroza. Irving's been on the show.
We know Irving.
These people are still a resource for me today. And here's the thing.
That's awesome.
They're fantastic at their own profession. Dan Fulkerson, great resource for me, right? And what I found out from these people were at no point were they ever reluctant to want to help. They never viewed me as competition. It was synergy. It was like, hey, how can I help this person get better? Yeah. And I do that today. Like I'll talk to young attorneys, young law students, and I'll do that openly. And I'll say, look, I don't want anything. Just pay it forward. Yeah. The next person that comes to you, you give them the same amount of time, effort, energy, and be authentic and be open with them and help them grow their practice. And it pays off, man. Like, karma's a bitch, right? But karma can be an awesome thing as well too. Right. And the energy put out there is the energy you get back. So
yeah, absolutely.
Man, I love that come up story, man. Just
it's
opening
awesome.
the white page. What are white pages?
Like a Yellow Pages.
Yellow
No, I'm
Pages.
just joking. I'm teasing.
I mean, but yeah, I'd Google it, I'd type it, I'd literally go to LinkedIn and I'd say, CPA La Jolla. I'd be
Right.
like, and I'd like pick a name and I'd say, just call this person, right?
And so you were picking like CPAs. Like what made you do that instead of, I guess, my mind goes to like looking for someone who would be my client. So how did you like come to that strategy?
Because from an attorney perspective, somebody who wants to do business law and estate planning, right? Your number one resources are going to be CPAs, financial planners, and realtors. Why? Because clients trust and like their CPAs, financial planners, and realtors. If you're trusting these people to help you buy a house, do your taxes, manage your finances, you're going to trust them for a referral that they might give to an attorney, right? So those are my point of contacts. Those are my power team, so to speak, right? And so I wanted to get to these people and I would say, hey, look, this is who I am. Let me teach you about me as a person, and let me tell you what I could do for your clients, right? And usually all these people already have contacts. They're already established, right? So, but to get in front of them, and a lot of them will be like, I haven't seen the attorney that my point of contact in 10 years. I just know him by phone. So you calling me and taking me to happy hour, coffee, lunch, dinner, or
You're
whatever.
already moving to the
You're
top
moving
of
up,
the
right? And I remember in 2014, all these contacts started reaching out, right? And I would go to events and I would meet them, and it was constantly maintaining these relationships, right? And then finally delivering on it, right? If you get somebody to refer you a client and then delivering on that, and that client calling that person up and saying, that was a great experience. He was great at what he did. He gave us 100% of what we wanted, right? And more. That builds that relationship to the point where you continue to get the referrals from them at that point and build your business.
That's awesome. Do you think that you being a trainer at 24 Hour Fitness and kind of that experience helped in your sales outreach process? Like, did you bring some of your experience and skills from that over to like, all right, now I got to start making calls? Is that something that you did when you were a trainer to get clients?
100%.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you guys know or have had him on your show, Jeff Disher. Jeff Disher is a fantastic realtor. Highly recommend you have him on your show. Jeff is one of the guys that I always talk to about this, because him and I were at 24 Hour Fitness, and he was also a trainer out there, and he did fantastic as well. And what separated us in a lot of ways was I never had a problem walking up to a person and talking to them, right? And when I became a manager, I always wanted to find fantastic trainers that were willing to go out there and coach and communicate with the masses. A lot of people have a hard time walking out and communicating and talking to people. Yeah. I never had a problem with that. And I wanted to coach people to do that. So that, being in that environment for almost 10 years, and I was at 24 for 10 years, allowed me to develop those skills where I didn't have a problem getting rejected, right? I didn't have a problem, walking up to somebody and trying to introduce myself and worrying about what they think of me, right? That was never a concern, right? My biggest thing was in 2014 when my son was born, I was like, that's what mattered. That was my why, right? I don't care if you say no to me. I don't care if you think I'm a clown, right? I'm still gonna talk to you. And if you say no to me, that's fine. I'll try again tomorrow, right? And once you can identify that why aspect of it, it changes the game for you completely, right? Now you know what you're waking up every morning at the butt crack of dawn for, right? Now you know what you're doing for. And till today, my son, my daughter, my wife are my why, right? I do everything for them. And if you remember that, game changer. You'll dominate everything and everybody.
Yeah. Man, it's so important. I mean, I don't want to say you're lucky, because I don't like saying that, but just to be able to have the innate ability to not be afraid of rejection and talking to anybody, that's such a huge thing. I struggled with that so much growing up. I was totally introverted. I was always really good at what I did, but as far as like meeting new people and talking to strangers, it was just like, I avoided it at all costs. And it took me a really long time to develop that skill. And I call it a skill because for me, it had to become a skill, because it didn't come naturally to me. It wasn't, part of who I was. And luckily, and I actually was a fitness trainer as well at Orange Theory. And that was a huge part of it, being around people all the time. And like, it definitely helped develop my skill set in terms of talking to strangers, developing quick relationships, asking the right questions, engaging with people, being interested, making eye contact, like all of those things. And man, it's just such an important like asset and skill to have for business and life in general, but especially business.
You said it there, right? It's a skill that you have to learn to develop. But what I want to say is, If you don't have that, it's not the end all be all. Because when you and I talked about it earlier, I said, look, there's 3 kinds of lawyers in the world, right? There's rainmakers, there's facilitators, and there's technicians, right? Rainmakers are fantastic at bringing in business. Facilitators are great at delegating, and the technicians are just great at doing the legal aspect of it, right? Most people in the big firm life are great technicians. They don't want to go and, kiss babies and shake hands. That's not what they want to do.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. You have to identify what you're good at, right? When you start your own practice, in order for the practice to be successful, you kind of have to be good at all 3 of them, right? And then eventually identify what you're great at and find the other people to fill the other aspects in. If you're not a great rainmaker, if you can't do that, it's okay, right? Find people on your team that are great at doing that, and you do the other aspect. Maybe you're a great facilitator at delegating different options, right?
Right.
Find great rainmakers to do that. But if your goal is to kind of get in that position, look, I told you, I moved here in the middle of 8th grade, right? Just think about how life was in 8th grade,
Right.
9th grade, right? I moved here 2nd semester of 8th grade from India, right? I wasn't communicating very openly, very clearly in a lot of ways, right? But I knew that growing up, I did theater, right? So I was learning to perform. I did mock trial all 4 years of high school because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer in high school. So all those things helped me develop the skills to go out there. And then, when I became a trainer, it puts you in that position. So if you know you want to do that, work on it early. But if you don't have it, that's not the end of the world, because your job is to then find people on your team that are good at those skills, and you focus on what you can do.
Yeah.
I've seen as an exercise, so like inverted kids who maybe they're in high school, they're coming up and they want to become entrepreneurs, but they're scared to talk to people.
Yeah.
I've seen mentors coach them, be like, hey, go down to Balboa Park, and I want you just to read this book out loud in public to people. Just stand right there and read your book out loud, really loud. And them do that, them go from introverted to like reading to people, and just like all of a sudden they're extroverted. They're not scared to be in front of people anymore and talk to everybody.
That's crazy.
I mean, sure, I'm not having my 9-year-old go to Balboa Park and read. I'll let you know that. But no, I get your point 100%. My son, his personality is very much like his mom. He's sweet, shy, timid, right? My daughter, like me, she's loud and rambunctious, right? So with my son, who's 9 years old, in order to help him come out of his shell, we would put him, in sports, and he loves it, right? He plays baseball, he plays soccer, he swims, and all these things. When he's around a team of people and he builds that camaraderie up, right? It allows him to come out of his shell, and he enjoys it a lot. That was a great way for him to do that. So.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, team sports help with that a lot.
Yeah,
and it boosts confidence.
it does.
Yeah.
Especially when you find out you're like pretty
at
decent at something,
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're losing 10 straight games and you come back from that builds character as well too sometimes. I'll tell you that.
Sure. It's definitely important to see some results though, because like those results create certainty.
100%.
And like if you never see, it shows resilience, especially for a young person, if they still are going and they're still going after that. But sometimes when you don't see those results, it's very discouraging. But that's why I feel like having great parents and having a great team around you, they're the ones that are going to help you like continue to push forward,
Right.
Yeah.
My son's asked me about my practice, right? And I think the pandemic was interesting because I started working from home a lot more during the pandemic time. And he's kind of growing into that, and he sees what I do. But when he'll have games where they haven't won, like 3 or 4 times, or he's gone, 0 for 3. And those are the moments that are coachable moments, right? Where you tell them, hey, look, you're never judged on these low moments in your life. You're judged from how you bounce back, and you're doing amazing, right? When you ran really fast. When you slid, oh man, that was great, But a lot of times we want to hide our kids from struggles, and I think struggles is where you kind of grow from a lot.
Absolutely.
So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about, because I wrestled in high school, and I've done jiu-jitsu since right out of high school, and boxing, martial art, MMA and stuff. And what I love about like the one-on-one sports is I'm the only one to blame. I can't blame him and the team.
Right.
It's because you didn't catch the ball, bro.
Right.
And you can't do that. Like if I go in there and I lose, it's because I messed up. Because and deep down I know, I didn't run all my miles. I didn't put in real effort in the gym, on the mat and everything. And then once you realize that all the responsibilities are on you, that's when you rise up to the occasion.
I agree.
And that's when like you wake up early and go run your 3 to 6 miles.
Right.
The one-on-one sports, man.
I love one-on-one sports.
Yeah,
man.
I know. It's so funny. I only, for whatever reason, I only took to the team sports. I think I played tennis when I was really young.
I think this is it's the social aspect of it a lot of times
Yeah.
too, right?
I mean, yeah.
Like I did martial arts when I was younger, when I was in India and stuff like that, and I
Right.
enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I was just a social person.
Right.
So I enjoyed the aspect of being around other people and building a camaraderie. Right.
Yeah.
No, you still like when you do jiu-jitsu, wrestle, and all
still
that,
have a team.
you still have a
Right,
team.
right.
You train together. But when you're on the mat, like
That's just you.
It's just you.
It's just you.
You know, and having a good team actually does help. If you're around other killers who are just there like pushing
Right,
you.
right,
Yeah.
Like
right.
I remember one thing that pushed me in wrestling was I remember a couple of my teammates, they wouldn't want to train with me. They're like, "Nah, you don't take it serious. You're like we like to train hard." And I was like, "Oh yeah, dude." I remember I trained for like hard as fuck for like 2 months away from them. got really in good shape, and I came back. and then they messed with me afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, so just that type of camaraderie as well.
But that's awesome you say that, because you're right. At the end of the day, when you're in that cage or when you're in the ring, wherever else, it's just you with the other person. That's why, with MMA, which I love, you'd see, fighters switch camps, right? When they lost. And I always said, I was like, are you losing because of your camp that you're in? Or are you losing because of the work you're putting in?
Right.
Because if you switch from, AKA to Winklejohn or whatever, and you still lose, what does that say?
Yeah.
Does that say that it was their fault? Was that your fault? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess I take it back because I did run track. I ran track for 8 years, high school and football, or high school and college. And you do have team stuff like relays and stuff like that. But man, the conversations that you have with yourself when you're running a 400 meter is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it goes to what you're saying. Like, it's like only you, and you're talking to yourself. You have to pull everything out within yourself. And man, that it is very powerful.
Like a good example when you're like, I'm gonna start my own firm.
Right.
I'm gonna open up the white pages.
Right.
I'm gonna make the calls
Right.
and everything. You have to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
You don't versus like if you joined a
At a
firm,
firm.
it's like you have that team right there.
Right.
I can relax here because I
Little
know
bit of a safety
John.
net,
I know
yeah.
John got it. Versus
Right.
no, it's all the responsibility is on me.
Right.
I have to rise up to the occasion.
100%. You're absolutely correct. 100% on that.
And that creates that fire.
Right.
And
That creates that fire under your
Yeah.
ass. Yeah, no doubt.
You're right. No,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was. Because you can't blame anybody for that, right?
Yeah.
If you're failing at that, it's just at that point, it's just one-on-one at that point,
Yeah.
right?
You won some matches then, bro. You out there.
Bro,
There you go.
You got some
And then
belts up there.
and then you built your team.
And he's talking about like when he's running, he's having conversations. I despise running. And
Yeah.
I've done a couple of like Ragnar relays and half marathons, and I promise you, those conversations I have with
Oh my
myself
gosh.
are like, "What are you doing here? Why are you doing this? Why you signing up for this? What'd you pay for this? Come on, man. You could be sitting at home. You could do something else. Go to the gym. What are you doing?
Like,
Bro,
who are you running from?
Seriously, who are you running from?
Who are you
Exactly.
running from, bro?
What the hell are you doing here?
in a 400, which I would say is probably the hardest race because it's just a long sprint, right? It's not like you're not pacing yourself. It's a
Right,
long
no.
sprint, and
All
it's like
out.
the conversation evolves. It starts like, oh yeah, I'm getting it out the gate. Come around the corner, like yeah, I'm in stride. This feels good. This feels good. And then when you come around the second turn, you're like, literally, I would say like, this is terrible. This is terrible. I hate this. This feels like shit. Oh my god. And then you're like, okay, I got to kick. Here I go. And you're like, yeah, I'm finna get it. And then the last 50 meters, you're like numb from the waist down.
Right.
And then just your legs are burning and you're like,
just
it's
pumping everything you
all,
got.
like your brain is running at that point, not your legs. And you just get across the finish line, bro. Wild.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
I think about that for half marathons, like 13 and a half miles. That's all you're saying. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who told me to do this? You should have done this. What are you crazy? Are you stupid? What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's literally the whole conversation I have myself. And then eventually you're like, you know what? Just suck it up and just do
Right.
it.
Yeah, like that's how I felt like when I hiked El. You ever hike? Are you a hiker?
I wouldn't say I'm a hiker, but I enjoy hiking.
So I hiked El Cajon Mountain. It's the tallest mountain here in San Diego.
Dang.
And it was like we went early. It was overcast, so you can't see the top of the mountain. So you're just chilling. You're like, man, this is awesome.
Right.
I'm enjoying the conversation. It's early. It's cool. I'm loving this. And then you get like, and then the fog dissipates.
Right.
And then you look up in the mountain. You're like,
It's still there.
We ain't go nowhere yet.
And then it's hot. And then like every time you think you're making it to the top, you're like, there's still more. And what makes that hike very hard is you're going uphill both ways. It's a literal
Really?
hike up, and it's a literally a hike down. Yeah,
Oh.
because it goes like
Oh, boy.
big up and
Oh,
down
up and
and
down.
stuff.
So on the way
and then
back,
a
it's
huge
literally the
up,
same thing.
and then it's literally the same thing.
Dang.
And I just remember thinking, I remember at one point, like I was so exhausted from the hike. It was like, it took me, if you're really in good shape, you could probably get it done in like 6 hours sub.
Jeez.
Have you heard of Mount Gorgonio? So Mount Gorgonio is the highest peak in Southern California. So I hiked that one year for my friend's birthday.
Yeah.
We backpacked. We took backpacks and everything else, and we had to camp at Half Point, right? I'm going up there, and you're all excited, so you're rushing up there. The problem that happens is you end up getting like altitude sickness, right? You get like a headache. So I got there, we camped out, and I remember the day we were going up there, there was an ultra runner. We were hiking. He was sprinting up the hill, up the mountain, and he came back down. And we
Lapped you.
camped. He did. We camped that night. I had a massive headache, right? You can hear animals out there. You have to poop in the woods, dig the hole, all that good stuff. The next morning, I'm going back up, the rest of the journey. He's running up there again, running back down. Imagine how I felt. I'm
Just like going, you hear this. He's like, hey guys.
He's local. He does it every day. I'm like, this is just terrible.
That's 100, ultra marathon is 100 miles, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, anything over 100 miles.
Yeah.
But he's like, you could tell. But I was like, well, he's not carrying a backpack. I'm
Right.
carrying a backpack. Why don't you carry a backpack, bro?
And those guys, like, they tend to be like super skinny and stuff.
yeah.
You're
Oh, yeah.
like, man, this stick is gonna defeat me, man.
And he did twice.
Yeah, for sure.
He did.
Man.
No, but I remember thinking like on the hike and I just remember at one point I saw a helicopter going to get somebody else. And I'm like, should I wave at them?
Pass out. Then you pick me up.
The helicopter's going to get somebody?
Yeah, going to get
Dang.
somebody
How many
else.
miles is that round trip?
I think it's
30 something.
no, I don't remember. Maybe like 13 miles. No, not 13. Maybe like less than that, like half of that.
Gotcha.
But it's a hard hike though, and I'll look it up in a second. But I remember at one point I was just so completely exhausted, just completely exhausted. I haven't worked out in months before I did this.
That's not smart, bro. What were you thinking?
My homegirl, who's like a psychopath, who does these type of hikes
All
in
the
like
time.
130 degree weather and stuff.
Damn.
She's like, hey, you want to go for a hike? And I was like, yeah, I'll go for a hike. Let's go. And I already knew where she was taking me. We were driving there. I was like, hey, what hike we going on? She's like, oh, El Cajon Mountain. I was like, yeah, I knew. And then, but I remember just like barely I'm like, just put one foot in front of the other. Just put one foot in front of the other. I looked at the helicopter. I was like, I ain't no bitch. Let's go. And I remember at one point I was just like, just leave me. Just take off without me. Just take off without me.
She's walking up, all talking, and everything. And he's like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me.
She got annoyed because I drank all her water and ate all her snacks.
That's funny.
But I made it. I didn't give up.
That's awesome.
There you go.
I forgot
That's
the
what's
point. I forgot the
important.
point of the story, but like, I wish I remembered the point. I should have wrote it down. It'll come back to me later.
Yeah.
It was about climbing those mountains, man.
Yeah,
Overcome those
exactly.
obstacles.
Oh yeah, and not giving up
Right.
when you want to, when it sucks and
hard.
you're just exhausted and you're tired and you don't want to do it no more. But you're like, nothing I do short of calling 911 for help is gonna get me to the bottom of this mountain.
Right.
I have to just, no matter how slow, put one foot in front of the other. One foot in front of the other.
Right.
Take as many breaks as I need, whatever. But like, I have to get through this mountain. No one's gonna come pick me up in a SUV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even in business, it has to be sort of the same way. When things suck, you have to be like, I'm gonna make one more phone call.
Right.
I'm gonna make one more phone call. One more phone call.
Look, I'm 10 years into my firm, right? When obviously, 10 years in, I have a 9-year-old son, a 3-year-old daughter. Doesn't change. The work ethic doesn't change, right? You continuously have to adapt that if your goal is to grow that firm.
Right.
The motivating factor is there, right? Initially, it was just me and my wife. Now it's my wife and I and my 2 children. But you can't have those days where you're like, you know what? I'm not gonna make that call, or I'm not gonna go to that event, and I'm not gonna network. If you do that, the results are you're gonna see the difference in the results, right? But if you want to grow, you got to put the work in day out, and it pays off.
Yeah. I think this is actually like scientifically proven, and we also see it in every aspect of life. But this is something I learned from my dad, because he has behavioral health programs, and he helps people break addictions, quitting smoking, alcohol, weight loss, and stuff. And everything is about retraining the mind. And part of what he says is that every time you get a craving for something, it's usually very uncomfortable, right? Because if you're trying to quit something, when you get a craving for something you know you shouldn't have, you want it, but you're telling yourself you can't have it, and it becomes uncomfortable, right? And so what he would say is that this feeling of discomfort, it's a sign. You have to know that this is a sign of an opportunity to have your mind train and your body heal. And so it's like, you see that in every aspect of life, just like you were saying, the discomfort is an indication of like growth, an opportunity for growth. So it's like, usually in those areas of life, everywhere, when it gets hard, that's the sign of, hey, this hard moment, this is the indication. If you get through this, you're going to be one step closer to succeeding. And it's like, if it's always easy all the time, you're not really experiencing growth necessarily. It's like when you're lifting weights in the gym, like the growth comes from you tearing your muscle. You know what I'm saying? From it
Literally
being hard. Yeah. So it's like, you can only grow. That's why they call it growing pains. You can only grow through a struggling moment or a moment of pain.
Mm-hmm. Preach. Yeah.
Period. End. Yeah.
Period.
No, it's facts.
So, but yeah, and it's just like, I feel like that's what separates, I feel like people who are successful really quickly and not, is they realize that the discomfort is just like, that means that's where I should go.
Yeah.
People talk about fear, like Jimmy Iovine said, it's like, oh, when you get that fear, you have to lean into the fear. And people usually run opposite away from the fear, but the fear means that's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you're scared to go talk to a stranger, you probably need to be talking to that stranger. If you're scared to make the cold call, that's what you need to be doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
It's probably like the difference between spending 10 years to building up your firm versus winning the lottery. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And look, there's times in my practice when, I've been scared to do certain things, right? Mm-hmm. And I've backed away. I haven't leaned into it, right? And I always, at the back end of it, I always regret it.
Right.
Right? When the whole social media boom was happening with videos and everything else, I remember thinking, I want to do this.
Right.
I resisted, right? I'm doing it now, doing it, knock on wood, it's going well.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have done it way back when, right? Because it's very easy to let those fears of how you may look sometimes in a different element control how you respond to it, right?
Yeah.
And it can be challenging, right? But having people around you that can push you and motivate you in that direction, that put those tasks out there can help. And also always identifying why you're doing what you're doing.
The why.
Got to identify that, right? You got to identify why you're doing what you're doing, because at the moment you do that, it's going to make that task that seems so daunting, you understand, I got to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's that extra push right there.
What's your goal for the future of your business and your firm?
Time, right? Mm-hmm.
Like buying back time?
Yes, right. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is, everything I do is, for being able to enjoy and spend more time with my family. Right. Different people have different motivating factors for that. And so I've thought about this. People are like, oh, I want to make this much money or that much money. It's all well and good. I want to do all of that, right? But I want time. Like this past weekend, on Saturday, my son and I, he'd never been to a 49er game. So we flew up to Levi Stadium in Santa Clara on Saturday. Took him to his first 49er game.
Dang, you went to that game?
Went to that game. He was sitting there with me as we crushed the Cowboys, and two of my Cowboy friends are right there, and he saw me laugh at them, and it's all good. But what I'm saying is, those experiences, right? I remember I remember just seeing his face. It was funny. It was funny because the game's going on, but a lot of what I was doing was just watching him, right? And so those experiences, he'll remember that for the rest of his life. He's talking about it. I remember when I took him to the Warriors finals. Hasn't stopped talking about it, right? Those are just experiences you never get back. My goal is I want to travel, take multiple vacations with my family a year, and we do that, right? Because those experiences you never get back. You can always get material things and all that good stuff, but those memories and experiences are important. So for me, that time is important, right? Because it can be taken away just like that. So that's my goal. Like, I want to grow my firm to the point where I can have more and more time with my family, which is ironic because a lot of that means, if you grow your firm, that just means a lot more work, a lot more effort, sure. But I want to build a team around me that helps do that as well too.
Right.
I don't intend to do it all by myself.
Right.
So Yeah.
Do you put it like you're a very very physically fit guy, right? Do you put any?
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's good.
You ever put any like fitness content up as well?
You know, what's funny is if you Google my name at some point on YouTube,
Yeah.
you'll probably find some from way back when I was at a private facility, but not since I kind of transitioned, right?
Yeah.
I will say this: you have to. I told you early on in my career, I would wake up at 5 a.m. and I would go, train 4 or 5 clients and different things, and I'd come back into the law aspect of it. And that was because I was just building up, right? You got to pay your bills at some point. But once, if you want to grow and develop, you got to go all in, right? And that's what I did. So once I went all in on my practice, that's when things started taking off. I didn't have one foot in, one foot out. Right? Because when you do that, a part of you mentally, whether you know it or not, thinks, oh, I'm doing this because if I don't succeed at that, at least I have this.
Yeah.
Right? And that you don't know it.
Yeah.
You'll tell yourself that's not the reason why you're doing it. But in the back of your mind, there's that aspect of fear, right?
Yeah. Burn them boats.
And it's
Gotta
always
burn the
gonna
boats.
it's always gonna slow you down.
Burn the
doing
boats,
that. I
right? And
experienced
so
that.
the moment I did that, which is I think after my first year, I was like, okay, no, I did my networking and everything else, burn the boats. That's when my practice just took off.
So how are you incorporating fitness now?
I have an awesome home gym.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, like I built a sick home gym. Like I got bumper plates, I got my whole rack, everything else set up. I got Pelotons, everything else. So the only thing I don't have is a sled, which I need to get one. I love sleds. So, but I do have a membership 24 Hour Fitness still, and I do go. But generally I'd say nowadays, when there was a time when I used to get 5 days a week of workouts in, I probably get, every morning my routine is very simple. Every morning I get up. Every morning I'll get up. I'll go for a 30-minute walk with my headphones on, and I'm listening to positive affirmations. Right? I have set positive affirmations that I listen to on my walk. I have my a 25-pound weight vest on. So the 30-minute walk puts me, because I'm a Whoop, I can tell, it puts me at a zone 2 cardio. So I do that. And zone 2 is basically if you were doing like an incline walking at a treadmill or whatever. So I have my 25-pound weight vest on. I'll go for a 30-minute walk. On the 30-minute walk, I'll do, every morning I'll do push-ups, squats, and I'll come back and do rows, right? That's just disconnected from my other workout aspect of it. That's just for mental reasons, just to go out there and just listen to positive things that I need to start my day off. I'll come back, my son's finished his breakfast that I made him before. I'll hop in a cold shower for about between 5 to 8 minutes, right? That's my morning part of it. And then any other workout that I do in addition to that, that's separate, right? That morning part of it is my morning routine regardless.
What time you wake up?
Generally probably around 6. So, yeah.
Hey, are you the type of person? Do you as soon as the alarm goes off, feet on the floor?
No.
Okay.
It's not just me. Because look, there's people that do that, right? But what I do is I want to make sure that when that happens, that I do want to get light in my face as soon as possible, right? So with my son, when he wakes up in the morning, again, the kids will learn from you, right? So when he wakes up in the morning, the first thing he does before he, turns on TV or whatever, but he doesn't do, he'll go downstairs, he'll open the back door, he'll go outside, and he'll be hanging out just for 5 minutes because he knows getting sun in his eyes is important because he sees daddy do that all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what he'll do. He'll get like light in his face, right?
Yeah.
Natural light. And then he'll come back in, he'll be bare feet, he'll come back in, and then he might sit down and I'll make his breakfast and he'll have his breakfast. And then after breakfast, he'll go outside in the backyard, unprovoked, he'll go outside, he'll hit like 2 buckets of balls, he'll play soccer or whatever, just kind of getting his body ready. That's just his commitment to wanting to do what he wants to do. So again, those are all things that they grew up watching, right?
Yeah.
So he says, oh, daddy goes for his walks in the morning. That's what he wants to do. So
Man, that right there just shows how important that is, right?
Yeah.
We're always talking about, positive male role model, the father figure, and you're doing it for you, and he's just like, yeah.
they'll learn the good and the bad, right?
That's
So
amazing, yeah. So you have him go out there and get grounded, barefoot?
You know what's funny is I never
Yeah.
used the word grounded with
Right.
him and never done that, but he just sees me do it, right?
Right.
And so, and I go out there just because I want to go out there bare feet, right?
Right.
But he's just doing it anyways. But I definitely tell him, I say, hey, before you get any sort of like blue light or stuff in your face, any sort of like a TV light, go out there and get natural light in your face. It's just a great way to start. And that's what I do, right? So, and then I'll go out there, and then when we drive to school every morning, since he was in TK, he's in 3rd grade right now. Every morning when we drive to school, he goes through his positive affirmations, his I am affirmations every morning.
Nice.
I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm everything, right? My 3-year-old daughter, because she'd be sitting in the back, would hear him do that, and now she does it.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll say, you know, I'm a great baseball player, and she'll say, I'm a great ballerina, you know, or whatever, right? And it's great to hear that,
That's
right?
so
But again,
cool.
she's learning it because she's watching him do it, right? And
Right.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, my son is 3, my daughter's 18 months, and yeah, she copies him.
Right.
Everything. Yeah, the good and the bad.
The good and the bad, right? Yeah. So there you go, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
So that's so cool, man. You know, creating that routine, like me being at this stage. What stage of your firm were you when you had your son?
First year. Like
So,
so,
right.
I started my firm in 2013. He was born 2014.
Right.
That was interesting, man. Like when I told you, like 2000, that's when I was like, I'd work 5 in the morning to like 11, or no, 5 in the morning to 10 or 11, and then I'd come home, and my wife would just be like, this is the baby, right? And so I'd relieve her. I'd take my son for a 2-hour walk with my dog, right? We'd just go out. We was living in the UTC area, so we'd go walk around Renaissance. She'd nap for like 2 hours, right? So, because you know, she understood I'm working, so she's gonna do the baby aspect of it.
Right.
And so she'd just be like, here, and I'd take the baby, and I'd go for a 2-hour walk, and I'd come back at 12 or whenever, and she'd wake up, and I'd go sit on my desk, my dining table, and with my suit on, right? It was very important for me to do that,
Yeah.
you know, because if you're in your pajamas or whatever, your mindset's not gonna be there.
Right. Gets you in the mind frame.
Put the suit on, sit at my dining table, and start my law work, my cold calling, or whatever else you have to do at that point. So
When you woke up at 5, were you still going to the dining table too?
when I woke up at 5, I'd go train clients at that point.
Oh, right. That's
so
what
I'd
you
go train
were doing.
clients, and I'd come back, right?
Right.
So I think I stopped training clients in, I want to say in 2015. So
Yeah.
2013, 14, I did that. And 2015 is when I stopped doing that. So 2014, I'd come back, sit at my dining table, and do
Yeah.
law work.
Yeah.
On my dining table was my desk. I'd call people, right?
Yeah, nice. So you talked about growing your firm and buying back your time and being able to spend the time with your family. Do you have a vision of like what that structure looks like in your firm? Like what people are in place and what particular roles, so you're able to have that extra time, and when you're at that point, at what capacity, like what do you think you'll be doing specifically?
I think people always, are like, oh, I want people kind of like me, and I don't want people like me, right? Because if I had somebody who's just like me, I'm pretty sure we'd butt heads a lot, right? So I think my strengths at this point is I'm a very good rainmaker. I'm very good at generating business and bringing business in, but I'm also a good technician as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to get a staff where I can have people that I trust, train somebody to be a good facilitator, train my technicians in the way I want them to do certain things, and still be out there generating business. Because if I'm in the office only doing technician work, then who's bringing in the business, right? So I want to be able to do that, where I can go out there, continue generating business, and have a staff of people that I can trust to delegate responsibility to my technicians, right? That would be the goal, to do that.
Got it. And then you just be bringing in
Yeah,
clients.
I want to facilitate and
Yeah.
delegate responsibility, right? And be the face of the firm that brings that in, right? Obviously, so
Are you solo right now?
I am, right? I do have, the attorneys who have their own practices that do contract work for me because they own practices, some aspects of it, but I am solo.
How soon do you want to hire your first?
What's interesting is 2020 was going to be that year, right?
Yeah.
When everything happened. What happened from 2020 was that the world changed, the legal profession changed for the better. Got modernized, right? Since 2020, I've done trials on Microsoft Teams, right? I'm taking cases all over California now because I don't have to appear for a probate hearing in LA or a probate hearing in the Bay Area.
Right.
Everything is remote. That was awesome. That was great for that purpose. And it also it changed the scheme where I don't necessarily need to have multiple associates. I can have a couple of associates and more paralegals that do that work, right? So it definitely made the world better in that sense, the legal world at least. So I just need to figure out how I want to navigate that and then start building that staff to come on board.
Do you think anybody? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, sort of with the same mindset, like when you quit, when you finally went all in on your firm, things took off, right?
Right.
And I always think about this when I check out other attorneys, and they're like, "We specialize in immigration and PI and this and that. I'm like, how you specialize in all these things? Do you feel like at some point you're gonna have to choose where you want to specialize, whether it's trust or PI?
Great question. And what's interesting is that when I first started my practice, there's a term that people use called door law, right? Because when you're a broke law student coming out of law school, whatever comes in, you'll take it. I didn't want to do that, right? You have to identify what you like doing, what you enjoy doing, and what you're good at, right? That started with estate planning and business. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I am good at it. When I started taking on PI cases, I realized I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'm good at it, right? If you can truly commit to doing it and doing it at a high level, absolutely. I would never discourage somebody saying you have to specialize. Those days are gone, right? Big firms, they don't specialize a lot of days. They do different things, right? If you have the bandwidth and the ability to do something at a high level, by all means do it. Now, I don't want you doing 20 different areas of law, right? I enjoy litigating, right? So if I took on a litigation case, I would enjoy doing that. So that's why PI kind of worked really well for me. Because in PI, again, you're not going up against the other person, you're going up against an insurance company. So there's a level of, those are cases that you want to take on, right? Every aspect of law that I do, I'm helping somebody navigate something. If it's an estate planning, I'm helping them prepare to plan for their lives, to make sure their kids are taken care of, God forbid something ever happens to them. In business, very similar. A lot of these business owners are family members. They want to make sure that their business is protected and taken care of. Personal injury, same thing. I'm going up against the insurance companies to protect these victims of the situation. So, there's nothing preventing me from being good at all of that overall.
So like, I don't think like, I definitely think you could be, I'm good at multiple things at a very high level. But what I realize is it's not about what I'm good at a high level. It's about the optics from the other side.
Oh, I get it.
So if I want PI or I want trust, and I'm like, hey man, all you do this and this, well maybe you're not gonna be really focused on my personal injury case because you got all these trust cases, and then because it's like they don't understand that you can do both of them. It's just more of an optics from the client's perspective.
Have you heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none? Right? You know what the full quote of that is?
But a jack or
a master of one is
not as good as a
is a dumbass. I'm just joking.
Yeah, how does it
I
go?
believe it goes jack of all trades, master of none is still better than a master of,
Just one.
or something like that, right? So, I'm not saying I'm by any means a jack of all trades, right? So the three areas that we focus on is estate planning, business, and PI. Estate planning and business go hand in hand pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Business owners want to create estate planning structures. PI is unique in itself, separate by itself, but nothing is preventing me from being great at that aspects of it. Because at the end of the day, I'm a resource for my clients for what they need. If I have a client that calls me up and says, "Hey, Kris, I'm having an employment issue." I'm not an employment law attorney. I'm going to refer them to an employment law specialist that does that. Somebody calls me up, says, "Hey, Kris, I have an immigration issue." I'm not an immigration law attorney. I'm not a landlord-tenant attorney. And I get calls for all of these all day long, from a lot of them from past clients. And I tell them, unfortunately, I don't do that. But let me put you in contact. What that does is build credibility, right? I'm not taking on every case, right? I'm taking on cases that I'm comfortable taking on, I'm good at. So when that client calls me up and says, "Hey, Kris, I have this case," and I tell them, "Yeah, I do those. We do them at a high level." There's automatic credibility there, right? They understand that Kris doesn't do everything. He doesn't do all those cases, but if he's taking on this, and I trust him because he's done great work for us there, they'll take that on. Now, on the flip side of that, what's great about having your own practice is you get to, this is an important lesson for all young attorneys coming out. You get to pick and choose who you want to work with. Not everybody is somebody you want to work with, and not everybody is somebody that wants to work with you, right? That's the great thing about that, right? There's plenty of attorneys out there, right, that do different things that may be better for a certain client. And you have to pick and choose who's gonna be the perfect fit for you, where you do great work for them, they do great work, they're great clients, and you get to have a happy relationship. What you don't want to do is take that work home at night, right? If you have a client that's problematic, that's a headache, you're going to take that home at night. So if that client is uncomfortable with you as a client, as an attorney, Nothing wrong with that. Say, hey, look, let me refer you to somebody that I know that does that same area. You might be more comfortable there.
Right.
Right? So that's the great thing about having my practice and being 10 years into it, is that I don't need to prove anything to anybody at that point. Right? If they're not comfortable, look, let me put you in contact with other people that are great also in that area, and maybe they'll be beneficial for you at that point.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah.
How do you market yourself? Like, what do you do? Like, what kind of advice would you give? Like, what do you do for marketing, and what part of your marketing do you see working the most?
My advice would be find something that is authentic, that is you, right? Not everybody can do all the different types of marketing out there, right? Some people are great at face-to-face networking, right? They may not be great at videos, right? Some people are good at going on podcasts. They may not be good at face-to-face, right? On networking events. You got to find out what you're good at, right? And the only way to find that out is by putting yourself out there and testing the waters. What's worked for me is, like I said, I have a team that does my web, my social media, my SEO. I have a fantastic videographer who does my videos. I think videos is where it's worked out really well for us, because it allows us to be able to present content to the viewers in a short form manner that appeals to them, and it allows them to engage with us at that point too. So it's a very quick engagement versus being a written blog on a website, right? Written blogs and websites were great for SEO purposes, because if somebody went on Google and they Googled something, it would pop up. That may still be true, and it probably is, because I do get a lot of people coming off the content we have on our website. But I feel that the video content is more authentic. It gets out there. It allows the viewer to engage with us on spot immediately at that point.
What platforms are you seeing the most engagement and, I guess, response or results from?
Instagram for us right now. But that being said, I haven't tested the TikTok waters, right? But I should. I've heard people have good response from that, and we have the content to put on TikTok. But Instagram's been great. Usually when you do Instagram, you're doing cross-posting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything else, right? So we'll do cross-posting with all those. But I would say the most response that we get is generally from Instagram.
Yeah. I think Jeremiah kind of brought up something earlier for this particular reason about your fitness and kind of what you do outside of being an attorney. You mentioned something about, like, have you ever posted about, your fitness or your workout routine, or kind of just like your everyday life?
Yeah, just showing a little bit of your personal life, you know what I mean?
Something we see with our clients.
That's a goal.
Yeah.
That's something, again, it's funny because we talked about this with my videographer, is like, that's a part of my life. Like,
yeah, exactly.
There's nothing preventing me from on my walk posting a video, or during my workout posting a video and talking about certain things, right? What I don't want to do is I don't want to make it about the workout. Right? I don't want to be like, hey, I'm an attorney telling you how to work out. Granted, I did 17 years of that, right? But I don't want it to be about the workout. It should be more organic, about relating to the person, saying, hey, this is part of my life. Because people want to work with people they like, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And there's a reason why I'm not in a suit right now, right? There's a reason I wear a suit if I go to court, right? I wear a suit for events that I enjoy. I like wearing a suit, don't get me wrong, but I'm comfortable in this, right? If the client has a problem with that, then they probably are not the right client for me, right? I'm not the best attorney for them. Nothing wrong with that. High five, you go your way, I go my way. It's all good, right? I'll find you somebody who wears a great suit, and good for that.
Yeah.
This is who I am, right? I'm comfortable with that. So, but that's the goal, to do that at some point. So
I have a video idea for you. It's like 3 signs you need to trust as you're, like, lifting weights. Sign 1, boom. And then you're onto the bench. Sign 2. And then they're doing tricep pull downs. Sign 3.
You know what? I'll try it out and see how many hits I get and how many unfollows I get. And I'll be like, get me my followers back at that point. There you go.
You know what's cooler than just lifting weights? Is actual dynamic workouts. So, like, sled work, jumping, muscle ups. Like, things that are more dynamic, not just benching and curling and stuff. Like, it's not as sexy on camera. You know what I mean? People like to see athleticism.
Right.
You want a lawyer who's athletic. Good to know. I'm gonna call my guy up, be like, hey, let's work with this, man.
It's about relatability. It's about relatability.
Relatability. That's what I'm talking about.
So him and I came up with a saying, right? You're an attorney, right? You're good at what you do. And so you're good at what you do. And you're the best. And
right.
So and what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, Oh, cool. You closed a $18 million case. And my attorney's a stud. You know what I mean?
But the idea is that you want the ands.
I love that. I love that. You know what? Next time I post a video like that, I'll tag you guys on it.
There you go. There you go.
It's compliments to you guys right there.
But the thing is, the and is what separates you,
Yeah.
right? Because technically, from our perspective, from a consumer's perspective, everybody's the best. Everybody's great. Oh, they said it. All these cases, they're all super lawyers, or all this, that, and the third. They've all been practicing for a billion years. And it's like, and what? It's like when you put your resume, when you're applying for college, it's like, it's the extracurriculars
100%.
that
Yeah.
separates you.
Absolutely.
Like when a girl talks to you, like when your wife, when she went to go talk to her friends about you, she's like, oh, I met this guy named Kris. You know, he's going to be a lawyer, and he's a stud, and this.
And his arms are huge.
It's the ands, you know.
I'm gonna tell
It's a
you-
good personality, whatever. You know
I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
All right. My wife's gonna hate this. I'll tell you a funny story. I met my wife at UCSD.
Yeah.
Right. I was a trainer back then as well. I met my wife at UCSD. I saw her in one of my lecture classes. Right. And after class, I walked up to her, and I was like, hey, you know, how you doing? I met her, talked with her. I was like, you know, we should hang out. Do you want to go work out sometime?
Nice.
And I gave her a business card, and she's looking at it like, trying to like get a client here or something,
Did
right?
he hit on me, or you trying to get?
So yeah, I tried that. Then she goes home and she calls one of her friends and she's like, hey, this Indian guy came and gave me his business card. He's a trainer at 24 Hour Fitness. And her friend goes, wait a second. Some Indian guy gave me his business card.
No.
It was a friend of mine who was also a trader, was also a Indian guy.
Oh, okay. Wasn't you?
No, it wasn't me. It was somebody else.
He out here just handing
Yeah,
cards to
it wasn't me.
everybody.
I want her to get clients. So it was a funny story. But yeah, that's how I reached out to her. So she's like, yeah, and now we're married.
There you go. Did you guys work out?
We worked out.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, it wasn't the first date. No, she was like, I'm not going to a date with the gym. So we went to, Italian food in La Jolla. And then, but yeah, and then I actually proposed to her 10 years later in the same lecture hall room. So
Oh, wow.
I remember it was like, she always said, she's like, I don't want to be dating for 10 years and not be engaged. So the day before our 10-year anniversary of dating, I remember this was like, I was in law school. I tricked her. I said, hey, there's a concert at UCSD. We should go. So we go to UCSD. We're walking by what's called Center Hall, and I took her into the same lecture hall. Hey, do you remember this lecture hall? She's like, yeah, it's where we met. And then she opened the door, and my friends had set up all these stuff in the front of the lecture hall.
Yeah.
And then I proposed to her there. So
Yeah.
that was
That's awesome.
that was so yeah.
That's awesome, man.
You know, so Kris is a great attorney, and he's fit, and he's a family man.
There you go.
And he's a romantic.
I'll take that.
He's a romantic.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Fit, I don't know, but I'll take the whole family man stuff. We'll go with that, dude. Fit days, I don't know, it might have changed, but yeah.
I'll tell you though, the stuff that I really like to follow personally, just on my feed, is like just a lot of the self-growth stuff and the morning routine. I'm like super into the morning routine because I'm trying to like build and perfect mine. And you have an amazing morning routine. I feel like that's like, I'm gonna take parts of that. I feel like, and I'd be curious to hear
same.
about what your affirmations are. We can ask you off camera, but to be able to develop, those are the type of things that like as the and they really suck me in. You know what I'm saying?
I think the morning routine is very important. In fact, there's
Yeah.
a friend and colleague of mine. His name is Jarvis Leverson. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the morning hero. So if you get a chance, look him up. And he talks about having that morning routine. And he's fantastic. He'd be a great guy if he had a podcast as well.
Yeah.
But the morning routine for me, actually, even though I had a morning routine, like I remember last year there was a period I went through some health stuff, and it put me in a hole. Like, and I was never used to being in a hole, like mentally, and. To snap myself out of it, I created my separate morning routine aspect of it. I was like, I got to do something to snap me out of it. It's got to be a shock, and that's what it was, right? So, this 30-minute walk involves, health affirmations, positive day affirmations, and just different aspects of it, right? Gratitude affirmations. I'm a big proponent of gratitude affirmations because a lot of times you're trying to focus on everything else you want, but you forget what you're grateful for, what you have right in front of you in that moment, right? And so gratitude affirmations are a big part of my day as well. So.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do them in the morning. You could do them in that moment when you're feeling something's not connecting. Gratitude affirmation, just being grateful for where you are in your life at that point and what you have. And I have a lot to be grateful for, man. I used to live in a one-bedroom apartment, low subsidized housing apartment. That's what it was, right? And so from that to where we are today, and I have 2 wonderful kids, beautiful wife, great family, a house, a thriving practice, gratitude.
Yeah.
So
They say gratitude is a direct result of happiness. Like, you're the only way you can be truly happy is if you're grateful for
100%.
what you have in the moment.
100%. Absolutely. 100%.
Man,
I believe that.
I can't wait to like do this podcast again in like a few years.
Yeah.
You got like a booming team, and you've been way more successful, way more gratitude.
So
like,
much time.
And that's what this is going to be. This is the accountability,
Speaking on
right?
stage.
It's the accountability. Like
Yeah.
the reason you speak on it is because you're trying to speak it in existence,
Right.
right? If you don't speak those things in existence, then what are you doing, right? So that's a goal. I'm putting it out there. That's my goal, to have that, right? To build on that. So there you go.
I think that's why the affirmations are so powerful, because literally speaking it, it's the actual act of, like,
100%.
thinking in your head is one thing, but it just totally changes.
Right.
And it's even like, for me, like typing something in my phone doesn't have the same effect as when I actually write it down on
Right.
paper.
I agree.
You know?
I agree.
Yeah. Man, Kris, you have been awesome today. We really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
Amazing information. Where can people who are watching and listening find you?
Sure. The name of my law office is the Law Office of Kris Mukherji, Kris, last name Mukherji. You Google us, you'll find our website, find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, eventually, hopefully, TikTok. So
Yeah.
we'll go from there. Yeah.
Nice.
Reach out to us. I want to be a resource for my clients. I want to be a resource for people out there. And if I can't help you, my goal is to find the right people who can.
Absolutely. Thank you. You guys learned a lot this episode: estate planning, business law, family, health, personal injury, business growth, everything. This has been another episode of the Get Louder podcast, and we out.
Thank you.